On December 15th, if you listen closely, you'll notice something in the air, a stillness that feels intentional, a quiet brightness that has no name, and a slower rhythm than any day you've walked through this year. It isn't the holidays arriving. It isn't the year coming to a close. It is the moment Libra steps into the deepest realignment of the past 12 months. Like a scale that has carried too much weight, tilted too far for too long, just to keep peace for everyone else. Worn down from standing in the middle of every side, the needle finally returns to its center. From September through November, if you found yourself waiting too long for a message, a payment, a fair decision, or for someone to finally speak the truth of their feelings, it wasn't because you were wrong. It was the universe asking you to pause, to let the energies settle, to let what's been tangled gently find its pattern again. But Libra isn't built for waiting. You are built for smoothing edges, balancing rooms, repairing what cracks before anyone else notices. So when everything stalled at once, you felt unseen, smaller than your worth, and more fragile than you allow yourself to admit. And then, December 15th arrives, quietly. No noise, no signals, no celebration. Yet everything moves, delays resolve. Hands that once held back reach forward. Decisions that sat in limbo fall into place without resistance. Apologies don't come to fix, but to recognize your value. No more overworking to earn your seat. No more bending just to be accepted. On this day, the scale tilts toward no one. It simply returns to where it has always belonged in your chart. Fair, clear, light, composed. No one knows how many times this year you stayed silent just to avoid hurting someone. How many nights you wondered whether you were giving too much. No one saw the moments you nearly walked away, but stayed, not because it was easy, but because you refused to become bitter. December 15th exists to give you this truth. You did not imagine the imbalance. You were not mistaken. You stopped because the world around you could not keep pace with your heart. And now, finally, it catches up. If, on that day, even for one small second, your chest loosens as if a hidden rope has dropped from it, don't be surprised. The universe only ever works this way, slow, precise, without spectacle. True balance never knocks. It just places everything back where it belongs, including you. And when the scale is steady and you no longer lean forward to support what was never yours to hold, you'll recognize something profound in its simplicity. Fairness was never a reward. It was always your native state. The universe is only returning you to it. And in that moment, a new door opens, without fanfare, without urgency, inviting you to walk lighter, to see clearer, to breathe without armor, so that what is meant for you can arrive, like clean water, without announcement, yet perfectly aligned in a way that could not have been otherwise. As if life, after holding you still longer than you ever expected, finally places a quiet hand on your shoulder and says, "All right, Libra, now it is my turn to bring everything back into alignment." No thunder, no blinding sky. Just a shift so subtle the world won't notice, yet so undeniable you cannot miss it. What moves is not the world around you, but the field of energy within you. Your heartbeat softens, your breath deepens, and trust, though worn thin so many times, begins to germinate again. A calm you don't have to earn settles in, not because you held everything together, but because the universe places it in your hands as the late-year gift you should have received long before now. In that clarity of light, when the sun and Jupiter look in the same direction, the choices that once left you torn between conscience and kindness suddenly become readable. It isn't you who changed, it's the sky that changed its language. Jupiter doesn't just open luck, it releases the grip on contracts, approvals, negotiations that felt stuck through the entire autumn. Numbers, signatures, decisions, once tangled, flow with the precision of a river finally finding its true bed. Venus, on this day, is no longer the planet of tender romance. She is refinement itself, the discipline wrapped in grace, a frequency only Libra can truly sense. Venus joins Saturn, not to build walls, but to restore order. Where you were undervalued, you are now set back to your true weight. Where you silenced your truth to keep the peace, light steps in to balance the room. No conflict, no fracture, just the quiet correction of a score, tuned note by note into resonance. The seventh house illuminates, and it asks nothing dramatic of you. It requires only this: any connection, agreement, partnership, promise that wishes to cross into your next cycle must stand on clarity and decency. Half-built intentions fall away. Unbalanced exchanges drift off like dust, leaving the wind. Not because you forced it, but because frequencies no longer matching cannot hold. Truth arrives, not in blunt revelation, but in the softened language of adults who no longer wish to hurt each other. An email answered after 3 silent months. An apology arriving late, yet finally sincere. A payment that returns because timing, at last, aligns. A casual encounter becoming the hinge to the project you've waited on since summer. And perhaps what matters most is not that things resolve, but that they resolve when you stop holding everything in place. December 15th does not ask you to be stronger nor smarter. It simply asks you to loosen your grip long enough to recognize that for once, you are not the one balancing the scale. The scale balances itself. And in that nearly invisible moment, when the mechanism turns so quietly you barely hear it, a shift begins. Light as a page turned, soft as winter sun on a table, gentle as morning coffee you didn't plan for. No ending, no final chord, just continuation of what is becoming brighter, steadier, truer, reserved for a heart that has measured every beat for far too long. And when those movements become soft enough not to shake you, yet clear enough to steady you, it feels like a still lake finally reclaiming its horizon. This is the moment Libra begins to receive what you never demanded, but what the universe quietly recorded all along. Money, for you, has never been mere numbers. It is acknowledgement. A thank you no one had time to say. The value of months spent working with more patience than was ever asked of you. Libra does not chase wealth to measure success, but you have always felt the imbalance when effort and return sit too far apart. December 15th arrives like an unseen hand, placing the figures back in the right columns, the right cells, the right names. An email silent for an entire quarter returns with the exact answer you waited for. Not rushed, not padded with apologies, just waited enough for you to know your waiting wasn't empty. A payment once delayed by vague explanations moves through the system smoothly, as if it had never been stuck. A contract suspended between 2 calendars finds its final signature, a gentle period with the power of closure. No celebration needed, no announcement, no applause. What belongs to you returns the way you have lived your life, quiet, refined, gracious. But beneath that softness, December 15th delivers its lesson. Energetic justice does not arrive like a collision. It arrives like a key sliding into its lock. No force, no breakage, no dominance required. The sequence, 7, 12, 15, 24, appears not to mystify fate, but to make you smile when the reply lands at 7:12 a.m., when confirmation arrives on the 15th, when the financial call falls exactly on the 24th. Signs not meant for chasing, only for knowing that the final balancing of the year has intervened on your behalf without your management. Pending becomes approved is no longer a system update. It is recognition, a quiet declaration that Libra no longer lowers worth to be treated with respect. It is the moment you do not send another reminder. Do not overperform professionalism. Do not bow your spine to ask for reply, and still receive. It is not luck. It is balance restored. And maybe in a late winter afternoon, you check your account or simply step into your workspace and find that what once felt heavy is now strangely clear. You will understand then. The true reward is not the number, but the feeling of being paid right, in full and cleanly. No debt, no doubt, no exhaustion. And when everything sits quietly on the table, like a completed report no longer demanding you, no rush, no role to perform, you will feel a small silence open. Not to pause, but to recognize that you have crossed into another territory of maturity. No struggle, no claiming, no proving. Everything simply arrives, as if at last. Libra no longer needs to do anything more to deserve what has belonged to you from the very beginning. And in that moment, when you no longer need to grip, fix, or prove anything, Your mind clears like a window wiped clean after seasons of dust. Not because you've discovered something new, but because, for the first time, you are quiet enough to truly see what has always been there. Your nature, your worth, and the years of silent endurance you never named as such, only treated as habit. December 15th brings Libra not a revelation loud like thunder, but an awakening tuned to stillness. Your intuition, always refined, yet often blurred by responsibility and the weight of understanding too much, sharpens again. Cold, clean, precise, like a steel line that does not tremble and does not apologize for cutting straight. This is not detachment. It is accuracy, finally directed toward yourself. You understand now that being gentle cannot be the condition required to be loved, because real love does not ask you to shrink your voice, thin out your personality, or soften the edges that make you distinct. Real love, if it is love, must be able to stand beside you on the days you're quiet, on the days you are drained, on the days you have nothing bright to offer, and you no longer wish to be the landing place for other people's expectations, just to remain on the list of easy to love. When that clarity arrives, you do not rage at your past or blame those who asked you to be silent, so peace could hold a little longer. You simply observe yourself with the same tenderness you gave everyone else except you. You finally see that not all yielding is noble. Some of it is slow bleeding from a soul trying too hard to keep the air still. There were years when Libra believed you needed to bend, to soften, to absorb more than any human should in order to belong. But awakening doesn't come from rebellion. It comes from seeing clearly how many times you paid the price for a piece already cracked at the core. You called it goodness, while your heart was simply surviving. December 15th does not pull you out from relationships or rooms that once tilted your balance. It only shifts your vantage point. Enough for you to recognize where you feel heavy, where you feel drained, and where you've been quietly eroded beneath the mask of composure. You are not asked to be the strongest in the room. You are not assigned to hold the emotional equilibrium for every soul in motion. Today, you are only asked to admit that you deserve to stand still, to be loved without performance, to be heard without cutting your needs into smaller portions. And then, when the heart no longer strains to fit, when your words no longer shape themselves into what is easiest to receive, when awakening settles in like a scent rather than a storm, you finally understand. No one is born to live reduced inside a frame, least of all, Libra, spirit of wind, of justice, of horizon without walls. In that realization, you sit, not to rest, but to feel that the world continues turning without you at its center. The universe never asked you to ease every conflict. You volunteered for that role. Once that knowing opens, you do not announce change. You do not switch masks. You do not rewrite your part. But every choice begins to shift tone, quietly, gracefully, without spectacle. Because for the first time, you enter balance not as duty, but as your inner state. And there, what once exhausted you comes into focus, not for you to cut it away, but for you to stop offering your own lifeblood to keep it whole. And it is only when you stop trying to mend what was never yours to hold, when you no longer bend to fit a shape that was always too narrow, that something unexpected happens. The heart stops aching, and love stops being a task. It becomes simply the meeting of two souls who know where they are going, what they want, and what they can give without demanding anything in return. On December 15th, love doesn't enter with fireworks or storms. It arrives in a quiet rhythm, like a morning when the city is still in mist, and someone hands you a cup of coffee without you needing to ask. Care here is not sacrifice. It is presence. Not forced, not flattered, not displayed in loud declarations, but sincere in the way only those who have outgrown loneliness can understand. For Libras in relationships, the conversation is not a trial, nor a scorekeeping session. It is a clearing, the release of misunderstandings kept under the shell of polite peace. The moment two people sit down, not to confront, but to face one another, not to accuse, but to acknowledge, that is the moment love stops wounding. There may be words caught in the throat after months left unsaid. There may be apologies not meant to erase the past, but to show that staying together was never a one-sided effort. And there may be a quiet ending. No raised voices, no discarded affection, just two humans admitting they have reached the end of healing each other. The road continues, but it does not have to be walked side by side if each now must learn to stand on their own ground. For single Libras, the return of a familiar soul from another timeline does not arrive with cinematic destiny, but with recognition so gentle you wonder if you are remembering or imagining. A look that pauses the air, a smile that feels like it once sat beside you in another life. A question so simple yet instantly quiets your heart. This is not the love that burns and breaks, but the one that rises at the right warmth, at the right time, not dragging you out of your life, not asking you to become someone brighter or softer, just to be chosen. This energy isn't hungry to possess, nor careless enough to disappear. It moves slowly, still beautiful, still magnetic, and most importantly, it does not make you prove you deserve it. If in recent years Libra has loved as duty, worried as instinct, and held on out of fear of emptiness, this day opens a different doorway, where love is not a test of endurance, but a place to rest after the long road. When two people reach that truth, they need no vows, no written agreements, only eyes that no longer defend themselves, and hearts that recognize matching frequency. And in that deep, quiet knowing, there are no alarms, no proclamations, only the understanding that every connection with purpose will find its own footing without you holding it up. And what has completed its role will drift away like the tide going out. Nothing lost, nothing clutched. Love, this time, invites you to sit, place a hand over your heart, and realize you are worthy of affection that honors you gently, not love you, earned through exhaustion. And in that permission, when the heart no longer panics at choice, no longer trembles trying to prevent collapse, a subtle light opens. It doesn't speak, doesn't declare, but it guides you forward, slowly, softly, into a space where love is no longer proof, but accompaniment without captivity. As if an unseen hand rests gently on your shoulder and finally tells you you can breathe without keeping rhythm for anyone else. Not because you are leaving the world behind, but because you no longer have to hold it up. In these final days of the year, your body begins to speak, not through exhaustion, not through collapse, but through quiet renewal. Sleep no longer breaks at midnight thought. The heart no longer carries the weight of what you cannot control, and the mind no longer races to become shelter for everyone except you. For the first time in months, you sleep without guarding someone else's emotions, even in your dreams. Your aura. That field science can't yet measure, but the soul feels instantly, begins to expand again, not to attract, but to reclaim the space that once shrank under the stories, fears, and expectations of those who walked through your life. You once believed you were responsible for healing them, absorbing their wounds, turning them into wisdom. But now, that energy lifts from your shoulders like morning fog, dissolving under the sun. The lightness in your head, the ease in your chest, is not euphoria, but the natural release that arrives when you stop performing as savior. Conversations that once drained you no longer pull you into the role of buffer or fixer. You don't rush to soothe, to interpret, to detox someone else's turmoil. Not because you've turned away, but because you understand now that self-healing is the soul's own assignment. On days like this, you'll feel drawn to tidy drawers, change sheets, open windows, or simply stand on the balcony with no agenda. This isn't slowing down. It is reset. A quiet renewal without the need to make noise. Energy that clung to you for too long without belonging to you starts to loosen and release. The tired voices in your mind grow silent, not because you force them, but because they no longer find a home in you. Libra has always held the signature of the one who maintains order, who smooths tension, who notices the slightest shift in expression just to spare someone from more pressure. But when the reset begins, you no longer want to guess feelings, to be the anchor for stories people refuse to step out of themselves. You recognize how many years you have therapized an entire world without ever asking who has tended to you. Energetic detox is not only leaving heavy spaces, it is laying down roles you once believed were badges of honor. You no longer wish to hold emotions that never belonged in your hands. You return each suitcase of weight, not with harshness, but with maturity. You begin living again in your own body, not in the body distorted by responsibility. Strangely enough, the lighter you become, the more solidly you inhabit your truth. The quieter you grow, the deeper you understand. The more you release the role of rescuer, the closer you come to the Libra essence. Gentle but dignified. Not saving everyone, not abandoning anyone, but loving with boundaries and choosing with kindness. And then, on some late year night, when the world has gone still and you touch the silence inside yourself, you will understand. It wasn't the world that changed to give you peace. It was you who no longer needs to strain to carry it. From that moment, your steps are no longer taken out of duty, but out of freedom. No longer because you must, but because you want to. No longer out of fear of loss, but from the clarity of knowing exactly what deserves to remain. And in that step, when you no longer stretch yourself to be the version easiest to accept, when you stop lowering your inner voice just to keep the room calm, December 15th presents its final test, light as a sheet of paper, heavy as a fated door. It is not an exam of intellect nor a test of kindness, but a single measurement between the truth you know and the silence you once chose, so nothing would break. This is the moment when the universe no longer asks how you feel, but whether you will stand with yourself. A question so simple it almost needs no answer. Yet Libra knows better than anyone that your life has been built on choosing quiet instead of honesty, keeping peace outside while letting your own heart crack inside. You have told yourself, even convinced yourself, that sacrifice is noble, softness is civilized, self-restraint is maturity. But in the stillness of certain nights, with only your steady breath in the dark, you have known the cost you paid for what you called peace was far more than anyone ever saw. The test of December 15th does not arrive as confrontation. It comes as a mirror, and the person in that mirror is no longer the Libra who pleases everyone, but the Libra who finally asks, what truly belongs to me, and what have I been carrying, simply because I grew tired of setting it down? Drawing boundaries now is not defense. It is respect. Saying what needs to be said is not an eruption, but clarity offered so that both sides may grow. Choosing yourself first is not selfishness. It is the only path that allows your heart to stop living in the debt of expectations that no longer belong to you. When you dare to speak a line that sounds so small, I am tired of this role, or when you end a bond long past its pulse, or admit that you deserve more than quiet compromise, you do more than shift a conversation. You shift the year ahead. Your timeline changes, not with fireworks, not with triumph, but with a decision quiet, but irreversible, to live without betraying yourself. And almost by design, or by deliberate timing of the sky, the moment you choose truth, new openings begin to lift like a sun hidden too long. An email finally answered, a contract thought lost, a partner once silent suddenly initiating, an invitation that sees you as you actually are, not reward, alignment. When you stand in your axis, everything else aligns to it. Finances, like a river unblocked, begin to move. Partners stop hesitating. Agreements stop stalling. Promises stop floating in midair. What was wrapped in the word pending is decoded by a single choice, to choose. Delay dissolves because courage no longer asks for permission to appear. In the end, you learn what the universe has whispered for years. Harmony is not always peace. Some silences are built from self-erasure. Some calm costs too much of the soul. December 15th asks you only once, clearly without cruelty, to stop protecting external calm at the price of internal fracture. And from that moment, without announcement, without witnesses, your timeline shifts. Gentle but radiant, thin but true. Like winter sunlight, never harsh, never blinding, yet just enough to show the road that has waited for you all along. Not a new road, but the one you once feared to enter because you were used to standing in the middle so everyone else could feel safe. Now, with the scales no longer pressing down, you walk lightly. As someone who has finally returned to the full width of their life. No proving, no defending, just moving. And with each step, another door opens, just bright enough to show you that what waits ahead was never loss, but recognition. What belongs to you, even late, will return, in the right form, at the right moment, to a heart no longer trembling. And in that precise moment, when you neither pull to keep nor push to release, when you stop asking what must stay and what must leave, everything takes its rightful seat. What needs to remain, remains. What needs to go, goes without explanation, without resistance. All of it moves as lightly as the breath you forgot you once longed for. This is no longer luck in its old form, not reward for endurance, not compensation for the quiet losses you carried in silence. This is the final verdict of the year, not severe, not cold, but profoundly human. The universe is not judging right or wrong. It is simply returning frequency to the soul it belongs to. What was compressed, distorted, forced, delayed, now releases. Connections no longer in rhythm soften and fall away. The ones that match, even if as thin as silk, find each other again. In this stillness, Libra, you are not alone. You are simply walking again on legs, no longer carrying anyone else's emotional weight. Peace now is not rigid quiet, but full clarity. You are allowed to live as you are, in the true proportion of your soul, not shrinking to fit a palm, not expanding to hold a world. Right and wrong are no longer scales you must lift, because you finally understand that fairness begins first with yourself. So your declaration needs no podium, no thunder, no raised voice. I no longer make myself smaller, so others can breathe easy. This single line opens a gentler evolution, where those who stay, stay because they want to, not because you soften their path. Money arrives because you are worthy, not because you endured beyond your limit. Love remains because it is calm in its honesty, not because you polished every imperfect edge. And you, after a long season of repairing and overgiving, finally touch a purity that needs no translation. December 15th closes a cycle, but not you. It resets how you see the world and how the world sees you. You are still kind, but you no longer erase yourself. You still accompany, but you no longer carry. You still love, but you do not forget to love yourself first. Work, finances, connection, responsibility, all move into a state of clarity. No imbalance, no fog, no emotional debt, no hollow promise. And when you quietly realize that true peace does not need bright laughter or outward radiance, a deeper softness wraps you. Not the softness of yielding, but the quietness of a soul that knows its worth, knows its place, knows what to keep and what to release. Others may call this luck, alignment, astrological fortune. But you will know, beneath the stillness of a year closing, this is simply energy justice returning to its orbit. Not early, not late, exact. As if you had to walk every fracture of yourself just to understand how light gets in. And if on some night you open a window, taste the cold air, hear the city sleeping, and feel your own heart rest without effort, know this. It is not you who changed to fit the world. It is the world that adjusted its tilt to meet you. This is a new space, not dazzling but steady, not grand but enduring. Here, you do not rise to prove, nor bend to belong. You simply stand as your sign was always meant to. A scale, no longer trembling. And from now on, peace follows you, not as a rare prize, but as breath, as heartbeat, as the intrinsic nature of your soul since the beginning. Clear, balanced, and free.